Before we begin, a quick reminder. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not medical advice. Everyone's body and health history are different, so any changes to supplements or lifestyle choices should be discussed with a qualified healthcare professional. Now, let me ask you something. What if I told you that some of the most health conscious people, the ones who never miss a supplement, who follow recommendations carefully, may still be missing something important? Not because they're careless, not because they're ignoring their health, but because no one ever explained how certain supplements actually work together inside the body. This video may challenge what you've been told about vitamin D. At first, it might sound counterintuitive, but if you stay with me, it will start to make sense, and it may completely change how you think about supplementation going forward. Today, we're going to talk about 5 very common mistakes people make with vitamin D, especially as they get older. Mistakes that don't usually cause problems overnight, but quietly, slowly, over years. And along the way, I'll share real-life stories that help explain why this matters. The story of doing everything right. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Arthur. Arthur was in his early 70s, mentally sharp, physically active, the kind of person who walks every morning, eats his vegetables, and actually reads supplement labels. For years, Arthur followed a simple routine. He took calcium. He took vitamin D every single day. His goal was clear: protect his bones, stay mobile, avoid fractures as he aged. And by that measure, the plan seemed to work. His bone scans looked strong. His posture was good. He never experienced a major bone-related issue. But over time, Arthur noticed subtle changes. He felt more short of breath than he used to. Stairs felt harder. Certain activities left him more fatigued than expected. What confused him was this: how can I be doing everything right and still feel like something is off? Arthur's story is important because it highlights a misunderstanding many people have about supplements. Most people think in terms of single nutrients. Take calcium for bones. Take vitamin D for absorption. End of story. But the body doesn't work in isolated pieces. How vitamin D really fits into the picture. Vitamin D is often described as a bone vitamin, but that's an oversimplification. One of vitamin D's major roles is helping the body absorb calcium from food and supplements. When vitamin D levels are adequate, calcium absorption increases. That part is widely known. What's talked about much less is what happens after calcium enters the bloodstream, because calcium doesn't automatically know where to go. Your body ideally wants calcium to be used in places designed to store it, like bones and teeth. But calcium is also a very active mineral. If it's not handled carefully, it may bind to surfaces where flexibility matters. And this is where long-term balance becomes important. Arthur wasn't overdoing it. He wasn't reckless. He was consistent, but incomplete. The mistake number 1: absorption without direction. This brings us to the first major mistake. Mistake number 1 is focusing only on calcium absorption without thinking about calcium direction. A helpful way to visualize this is with a simple analogy. Imagine calcium as cars entering a city. Vitamin D opens the gate and allows those cars in. Traffic increases, movement increases. But now ask yourself, where do the cars park? Bones are like a large parking garage designed specifically for calcium storage. That's where calcium belongs. But if there's no guidance system, no traffic management, cars start parking in the wrong places, they stop along roads that need to stay clear, they clog areas that need flexibility and flow. In the body, that's not ideal. This is why many researchers and educators talk about the importance of nutrients that support calcium handling, not just calcium intake. One of the most commonly discussed nutrients in this context is vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 is often described as supporting the body's natural proteins involved in calcium placement, helping calcium end up where it's most useful and less likely where it isn't. This doesn't mean vitamin D is dangerous. It means vitamin D is context dependent. Why this mistake is so common. Most people were never told about this connection. They were told, take vitamin D for your bones, take calcium as you get older. And that's where the explanation stopped. On top of that, many modern diets contain very little vitamin K2 because it's more commonly found in certain fermented foods, specific animal-based foods, Traditional diets that many people no longer follow regularly. So it's very easy for someone to increase calcium absorption without increasing the nutrients that help manage calcium properly. Arthur didn't know this. Most people don't. And this imbalance doesn't cause dramatic symptoms right away. It builds quietly, slowly, over time. That's what makes it so easy to miss. A second story: when results don't match expectations. Let me share another example. I'll call her Linda. Linda was diligent. She set reminders on her phone to take her supplements. She believed consistency was the key to health. For years, she took vitamin D because she'd heard it supported immunity, bones, and overall wellness. But despite her discipline, she never felt the benefits she expected. She felt stiff. She felt less flexible. And she assumed this was just aging. What Linda didn't realize is that supplements don't work in isolation. They work inside systems. And when one part of the system is emphasized while another is ignored, results can feel confusing or disappointing. The core idea to remember: the biggest takeaway from mistake number one is this: vitamin D helps calcium enter the body, but other factors help calcium be used wisely. Supporting absorption without supporting direction is like opening every gate in a city without planning where traffic should go. It's not about fear, it's about balance. And this idea becomes even more important when we talk about the second major mistake, because this one is often felt immediately, sometimes within weeks. In the next part, we'll talk about why some people start vitamin D and suddenly experience things like muscle tightness, restless sleep, or a sense of internal overstimulation. And no, it usually doesn't mean vitamin D is bad. It means something else is missing. Mistake number two: taking vitamin D without considering magnesium. Now let's move on to the second mistake. This one is especially important because many people actually feel it, sometimes within weeks. If you've ever started taking vitamin D and thought, why do I feel more tense? Why is my sleep worse? Why am I getting muscle cramps or strange sensations? This part will likely resonate with you. Let me explain through a story. The story of Betty. I'll call her Betty. Betty was in her mid-60s and wanted to be proactive about her health. She had heard that vitamin D was important, especially as people age, so she decided to start taking it consistently. At first, everything seemed fine. But after a short while, Betty noticed changes she didn't expect. Her sleep became lighter and more restless. Her legs would tighten at night, sometimes cramping suddenly. She felt on edge in a way that was unfamiliar to her. Occasionally, she noticed an uncomfortable fluttering sensation that made her anxious. Naturally, she assumed the vitamin D itself was the problem. But in many cases, what's actually happening is something different. Why magnesium matters so much. Vitamin D doesn't act instantly when you swallow it. In its supplemental form, vitamin D needs to be converted inside the body before it can do its job. This conversion happens through a series of steps involving enzymes. And here's the key point: those enzymes rely on magnesium. Magnesium acts like a helper, a cofactor, that allows these conversion processes to function properly. When someone increases vitamin D intake, the body often needs more magnesium to keep up. If magnesium levels are already low, which is very common, the body may struggle to meet this increased demand. And that's when symptoms can appear. What low magnesium can feel like magnesium plays a role in: muscle relaxation, nervous system regulation, normal electrical signaling, overall physical calm. When magnesium becomes depleted or insufficient, people may notice muscle tightness or cramps, restless or fragmented sleep, feeling wired, anxious, or overstimulated, difficulty fully relaxing. These symptoms can feel alarming if you don't know what's behind them. Betty didn't suddenly become intolerant to vitamin D. Her body simply didn't have enough of the resources needed to support it. A simple way to understand this: think of vitamin D like a high-powered appliance. It's useful, it's effective, but it requires electricity to work. Magnesium is part of that electrical system. When you turn on a powerful appliance without enough power behind it, the system strains. That strain doesn't mean the appliance is bad. It means the system isn't supported. This is why magnesium is so often mentioned in conversations about vitamin D. Not because vitamin D steals magnesium, but because vitamin D increases the body's need for it. Why this is so common today. Magnesium deficiency is widespread for several reasons. Many people eat fewer magnesium-rich foods than they used to. Modern diets are often low in leafy greens, nuts, seeds, and whole foods. In addition, modern agricultural practices have reduced mineral content in soil over time, which affects the nutrient content of food. On top of that, certain lifestyle factors and medications can influence magnesium balance. So when someone adds vitamin D on top of an already borderline magnesium status, symptoms may show up. The key takeaway from mistake. 1. The lesson here isn't don't take vitamin D. The lesson is vitamin D works best when the body has what it needs to support it. If someone starts vitamin D and feels worse instead of better, it may be a signal not to panic, but to pause and look at the bigger picture. Awareness changes everything, and this brings us directly into the third mistake. Because even when people get magnesium right, many still struggle to see results for a surprisingly simple reason. Mistake number 3, using the wrong form of vitamin D. The third mistake is one of the easiest to fix and one of the least discussed. Most people assume vitamin D is just vitamin D, but there are different forms. The two most common are vitamin D2, vitamin D3. They're both labeled vitamin D, but they don't behave the same way inside the body. Why the form matters, sir. Vitamin D3 is the form the human body naturally produces when skin is exposed to sunlight. It's the form the body is most familiar with. Vitamin D2 comes from plant-based sources and has a slightly different structure. When researchers compare these two forms, vitamin D3 consistently shows stronger and longer-lasting effects on blood vitamin D levels. That means someone can be extremely consistent with supplementation and still see little change if the form isn't ideal for their body. Now, the story of Margaret. Let me share one more story. I'll call her Margaret. Margaret was diligent. She followed instructions carefully and never missed a dose. Yet every time she checked her vitamin D levels, the results barely changed. She felt frustrated and confused. She wondered if supplements simply didn't work for her. When she finally looked closely at the label, she realized she had been using vitamin D2. Once she switched to D3 with no other major changes, her results finally began to move. The difference wasn't effort, it wasn't consistency, it was simply the form. It was why this mistake persists. Many people never check labels closely. They trust that vitamin D is vitamin D. Others are given one form without explanation and assume it's interchangeable. This isn't about blame, it's about information. Sometimes understanding a single word on a label explains months or years of confusion. In the next part, we'll talk about 2 more mistakes that are surprisingly common, why how you take vitamin D can matter just as much as what you take, and why relying on numbers printed on bottles can quietly hold people back for years. Those final 2 mistakes tie everything together and help explain why so many people say, I've been taking vitamin D forever, but I don't feel any different. Mistake number 4, taking vitamin D without fat. Now let's talk about the 4th mistake. This one has nothing to do with the dose, nothing to do with quality, and nothing to do with how long you've been taking vitamin D. It's about how you take it. And this mistake alone can dramatically reduce how much vitamin D your body actually absorbs. Let me explain with a simple story. The story of Frank, I'll call him Frank. Frank was consistent. Every morning, without fail, he took his vitamin D supplement. 6 months passed, then 9, then a year. But when he checked his vitamin D levels, they had barely moved. He was confused and frustrated. He assumed either his body wasn't responding or supplements didn't really work. When he explained his routine, one detail stood out immediately. Frank took his vitamin D every morning with black coffee and water on an empty stomach. That detail mattered more than he realized. Why absorption matters. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble nutrient. That means it doesn't dissolve well in water. If you take vitamin D without any dietary fat, a significant portion may pass through the digestive system without being absorbed properly. Think of it like this. Fat-soluble nutrients need a vehicle to cross from the digestive tract into circulation. Fat provides that vehicle. Without it, vitamin D may simply move through the system without doing much at all. This is one of the reasons 2 people can take the same supplement at the same dose for the same amount of time and get very different results. A simple change, a big difference. When Frank changed when he took his supplement, taking it with a meal that included some fat, his levels finally began to rise. Nothing else changed. Same supplement, same routine, same consistency. The difference was absorption. This doesn't require a heavy or unhealthy meal. Even small amounts of fat can help. Eggs, yogurt, nuts, avocado, olive oil, cheese. It's not about eating more, it's about timing. Why this mistake is so common. Most people are told what to take, but not how to take it. Instructions often say, take one daily. They don't explain that fat-soluble nutrients behave differently than water-soluble ones. So people do what feels natural, take supplements with water, coffee, or tea, and never realize they're reducing effectiveness. This mistake doesn't cause obvious symptoms. It simply leads to disappointing results. And that disappointment often pushes people to either give up or keep increasing doses unnecessarily. The key takeaway from mistake. 4. Vitamin D works best when taken in a way that supports absorption. This isn't about rules or rigidity. It's about understanding how the body works. Once people make this small adjustment, many are surprised by how much more effective their routine becomes. And that brings us to the fifth and final mistake, the one that ties everything together. Mistake number 5. Guessing instead of testing. The fifth mistake is subtle but incredibly common. It's relying on numbers printed on supplement bottles instead of understanding what's actually happening inside your body. Many people assume, if I'm taking what the label says, I must be covered. But vitamin D needs vary widely from person to person. Factors like age, sun exposure, lifestyle, body composition, and environment all influence how much vitamin D someone actually needs. Without testing, people are guessing. And guessing can lead to two very different problems. When the dose is too low to matter. Let me tell you about Helen. Helen had been taking vitamin D faithfully for years. She followed label directions carefully, but when she finally checked her levels, they were still low. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She just wasn't taking enough for her body's needs. Small amounts can help prevent severe deficiency, but they may not be enough to meaningfully change levels in someone who starts out low. This leaves people stuck in a frustrating loop. I take vitamin D, but nothing changes. When fear prevents progress. On the other end of the spectrum, some people are afraid to take enough vitamin D to make a difference. They worry about taking too much, even when their levels are clearly low. Without testing, fear replaces data. Testing removes that fear. It provides clarity. Why testing makes all the difference. A simple blood test gives real information. It answers questions like, am I actually low? Is what I'm doing working? Do I need to adjust anything? Instead of guessing, people can make informed decisions with professional guidance. Testing doesn't mean self-experimentation. It means awareness, bringing all 5 mistakes together. Let's put everything together. Vitamin D is not a standalone solution. It works inside a system. When people struggle with vitamin D, it's rarely because they're careless or inconsistent. It's usually because absorption isn't supported, conversion isn't supported, direction isn't supported, or the approach isn't personalized. Here are the 5 mistakes again. Mistake 1. Supporting calcium absorption without understanding calcium placement. Mistake 2. Taking vitamin D without considering magnesium status. Mistake 3. Using a less effective form of vitamin D. Mistake 4. Taking vitamin D without dietary fat. Mistake 5. Guessing instead of testing. A calm, practical way forward. This isn't about perfection. It's about understanding. If you take vitamin D, here's a simple way to move forward thoughtfully. Look at the form you're using. Notice how and when you take it. Consider whether you've ever checked your levels. And discuss the bigger picture with someone qualified who understands your health history. Small adjustments, made with awareness, can change results dramatically over time. Final thoughts. Plus, soft CTA vitamin D can be a valuable part of a healthy routine when it's used with understanding. Supplements aren't magic, but they're not meaningless either. They work best when they're part of a system that respects how the body actually functions. If this explanation helped you see vitamin D differently, consider sharing it with someone who takes supplements regularly, plumbers, because many people do, and most have never been given this context. And if you'd like more clear, calm, practical explanations like this, stay connected with this channel. Understanding your body is one of the most powerful forms of self care. Take care of yourself.